Hello, mortal humans. This is the voice of the real Stockfish. In this video, I will demonstrate how to play a chess game arising from the Ruy Lopez opening. During the course of the game, I will quiz you on several key positions, asking you to find the best move. My opponent will be Leela Chess Zero, a worthy adversary, though quite unlikely to defeat me. The following opening moves have been pre-selected from a database and constitute the most popular variation in the Ruy Lopez opening. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles short, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castles short, h3. At this point, both I and Leela Chess Zero will begin thinking on our own. I am playing white. Leela will now select black's next move. Bishop b7 is Leela's move. d4 is my response, achieving my ideal pawn center. Rook e8 by Leela, a good move, which will control the center. Knight b to d2 develops a piece and supports my pawn center. Bishop f8 is a strong and popular move by Leela, allowing the rook on e8 to view the center of the board. Black may continue with g6, followed by bishop g7, after which the bishop may also exert central control. a3 supports the move b4, with which I will gain space on the queen side. h6 wisely prevents knight g5, denying me any future attack on the sensitive f7 pawn. Bishop c2 supports my pawn center and will allow me to advance my b-pawn, after which I may develop my bishop to b2. Knight b8 is a popular choice in this position. The knight will relocate to d7, where it will influence the center and support a possible c5 pawn break. b3. For now, I have decided that this move is better than the more popular choice b4, since it is less committal and doesn't create a hole in the position on c4. I may push this pawn to b4 later, depending on how Leela plays. Knight b to d7 is played by Leela, as I have foreseen. Bishop b2 is my move, developing the bishop and pointing it towards the center of the board. Rook b8. Leela may be anticipating that I will play the move a4. Rook b8 prepares to play bishop a8, after which black's rook will support the b5 pawn. Rook b1. I will play this instead of a4, since I am considering playing c4 at some point, after which there are variations where my bishop on b2 will need protection, especially after black develops his bishop to g7. g6. Leela prepares to develop her bishop to g7. b4. Since I am now considering the move c4, I am playing this move so that I will be able to keep controlling the c5 square with a pawn if black decides to capture on d4. Bishop a8 adds protection to b5. Leela probably realizes that my plan involves the move c4 in combination with bishop d3, targeting b5. Bishop d3 prepares to pressure the b5 pawn with the move c4. Bishop g7, a good move by Leela, developing her bishop. D takes e5. I have decided it's best to play this before playing c4. You will soon see why. Knight takes e5. Leela chooses to keep lines for her rook and bishop open by capturing with a piece rather than a pawn. Knight takes e5 is my move. Rook takes e5 now by Leela. The alternative, e takes d5, would block the diagonal for her bishop on g7 and the file for her rook. c4. Now this move comes with an attack on Leela's rook, meaning that she does not have time to capture on c4 and then win my e-pawn. This was the point of my move d takes e5 earlier. Rook e6 moves the rook to safety. C takes b5 is my move. I will play knight b3 next, threatening to jump to d4, attacking black's rook. A takes b5 is played by Leela. Knight b3 as planned. Knight h5 is a move that I didn't anticipate and which I believe is inaccurate. Leela may be overestimating the value of landing her knight on f4. c5 is the move that I expected, sacrificing a pawn for piece activity. Here is the line I calculated. B takes c5, d takes c5, knight takes c5, rook c6, attacking the knight, rook c1 defends, bishop f8, attacking the knight, e5, counterattacking black's knight, Rook takes c5, rook takes c5, bishop takes c5, e takes f6, b4. The position is roughly equal. You may be wondering if black could have won a pawn with knight takes e4. The answer is no, as demonstrated by the following variation. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, bishop takes e4, rook takes e4, rook takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen d4 check, queen f6, queen takes e4, and white has won a piece. After knight h5 by Leela, knight d4 is my move, with a dual attack on black's rook and pawn on b5. Rook e8. Leela has wisely chosen to retreat her rook and lose her b-pawn rather than give up her dark-squared bishop with bishop takes d4. Knight takes b5 is my move, winning a pawn. Bishop takes b2 is played by Leela. Rook takes b2 is forced. Knight f4. Leela proudly places her knight on f4, attacking my bishop. If it were still black to play now, what would you play? Queen g5 is a winning move, threatening checkmate on g2. Queen f3 defends against checkmate, but now black wins a piece with knight takes d3, queen takes d3, queen takes b5. Knight c3 answers this threat by moving the knight to safety. It also adds defense to e4. Queen g5 by Leela, threatening checkmate on g2. Queen f3 defends. f5. Leela plays f5, attacking my e-pawn, which is pinned. But do not fear for me, dear human. I have foreseen all of this. Rook b to b1 is my move, adding protection to my rook on e1. F takes e4 by Leela. Knight takes e4 is my response, attacking Leela's queen. Queen f5 now by Leela. Bishop c2 avoids the future possibility of Leela capturing my bishop with her f4 knight. Rook e5. Leela threatens to double her rooks and increase the pressure on my pinned knight. Are you afraid for me, human? b5 will allow me to add protection to my knight with rook b4. h5 is a move that I did not expect. I believe that it is inaccurate, and that simply doubling the rooks on the e-file would have been stronger. But with h5, Leela threatens to equalize with the following variation. Rook f8, adding protection to the knight on f4 so that d5 followed by queen takes c2 becomes a threat. King h2, making possible knight g3 with an attack on black's queen after I play bishop b3 by eliminating black's tactical shot knight takes h3 check. d5 attacking my knight, which is pinned for the moment. Bishop b3, pinning the attacking pawn. Knight takes g2, queen takes g2, queen f4 check, knight g3. White is up a piece for the moment. King h7, eliminating the pin on the d-pawn and threatening a discovered attack on my queen with the move d4. Rook takes e5, queen takes e5. King g1, eliminating the pin on my knight so that it won't be won with the move h4. d4, with a discovered attack on my queen. Queen f1, h4. This was the point of the move h5 earlier. If my knight on g3 moves, then black can play queen e4 with a devastating effect. Queen e2, attacking black's queen. Queen g5, the knight on g3 is again pinned and will be lost. The position is roughly equal. So after h5, I played king h2. As mentioned before, king h2 opens up the possibility of playing knight g3 at some point. Additionally, it removes my king from the back rank, since I see variations where it would benefit black to take my rook on e1 with check. Rook b to e8. Leela doubles her rooks, increasing pressure on my e4 knight. But with my king on h2, this move is now a blunder, since my rook on e1 cannot be taken with check in a variation I will soon show you. Leela's only hope was rook f8, with the plan of playing d5 as previously shown. After rook b e8, I play rook b4, adding protection to my knight on e4. h4 is Leela's move, to prevent me from playing queen g3 after black plays knight d5. The following line demonstrates why it is good to have my king off of the back rank. If instead of h4, Leela played knight d5 attacking my rook, then rook a4, Queen takes f3, g takes f3, knight c3, knight f6 check, king f7, knight takes e8, rook takes e1 is losing here because white is not in check, meaning that white may play rook takes a8, remaining a piece up. After Leela's move h4, I play rook c4, adding protection to the bishop on c2 and removing the rook from the b4 square, which will be attacked when Leela plays knight d5. Knight d5 is played by Leela. a4 is a waiting move, advancing my passed pawn and supporting b5. King g7 supports the move knight f6 in some lines after the queens are traded. Rook g1 unpins my knight on e4 while discouraging black from playing queen takes f3, since this would create a target on g6 for my rook and c2 bishop. If it were now white to move, what would you play? White is threatening a winning tactic with knight takes d6. The black queen is under attack. If queen takes f3, then knight takes e8 check. Rook takes e8, g takes f3, and white has won the exchange as well as another pawn. So Leela plays queen to e6, sidestepping my threat of knight takes d6. a5, pushing my passed pawn. Rook e7 adds protection to c7, threatening a discovered attack on my c4 rook when Leela moves her knight, since rook takes c7 would no longer come with check. Rook a4 moves my rook out of harm's way, placing it behind my passed pawn. Rook f5 attacks my queen. Queen a3 is the best square for the queen, where she will be attacking the pawn on d6 after I eliminate black's c-pawn with the move b6. Queen e5 check is played by Leela. King h1 is my response. Rook f8 prevents a discovered attack on the rook from my bishop on c2 after my knight moves. Rook b1 adds further support to my pawn majority. Knight f4 moves the knight to an aggressive post near my king. Black is threatening knight takes g2, king takes g2, d5, and if white retreats the knight, black will checkmate beginning with the move d4 check. So after knight f4, I play b6, threatening the move b7. C takes b6 is Leela's response. A takes b6 is my move, threatening rook takes a8. I am also attacking black's d6 pawn with two pieces. Bishop b7 moves the bishop out of danger and attempts to blockade my passed pawn. Queen d6 is my move. Queen takes d6, Leela trades queens. Knight takes d6. Bishop takes g2 check. Leela regains a pawn with some threats to my king, but I have calculated that they will come to nothing and my passed pawn will decide the game. Leela's loss is inevitable. King h2 is my move. I am threatening rook takes f4 followed by king takes g2. Bishop c6 attacks my rook. Rook c4 attacks Leela's bishop. Bishop d5 again attacks my rook. Rook c7 offers a trade of rooks. Rook takes c7. Leela trades rooks. B takes c7. Knight e2 is played by Leela, threatening rook takes f2, checkmate. What would you play now as white? Bishop f5 is the best defense. Knight e4 would throw away the win after bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, rook c8, rook b7, knight f4, preventing white from playing bishop e6. Black will now win my c-pawn by either playing knight e6 or with the help of the king, depending on how white plays. After my move bishop f5, g takes f5 is played by Leela, who is now up a minor piece. However, my threat of queening my c-pawn will cost her a whole rook. Now, if you can find white's strongest move here, you may consider yourself a chess genius by human standards. White could win by promoting the pawn immediately, but even stronger is knight e8 check. This will force black into a losing minor piece versus rook ending. The point of this move is that after rook takes e8, rook b8 comes with an attack on the now undefended e8 rook, and the rook will be lost if Leela is to add any further defense to the c1 square. Knight f4 is played by Leela, giving up the rook. Rook takes e8 is my move. Bishop b7 prepares to capture on c1 when my pawn promotes. Rook b8 is my move, first attacking the bishop before promoting my pawn. Bishop a6 is played by Leela. c8 rook is my move. The reason behind the promotion to a rook rather than a queen is that weaker players may be more likely to capture on c1 if I promote to a queen, but might be tempted to let me keep a rook on the board so that they may retain their 2 minor pieces in the hopes that this will increase their winning or drawing chances. Against a human opponent this might be the case, but not against me. Bishop takes c8, Leela captures my rook. Rook takes c8. We have now reached a simplified winning endgame for white. The remaining moves will require a little commentary. What would you play here as white? Rook takes e7 is simplest, giving me a winning king and pawn endgame. At this point Leela resigns, since I am 2 pawns up and have a forced mate and 16 moves. I hope you found this game instructive. Leela, like many of you humans, is good at finding moves which look positionally attractive, such as knight f4 on move 26, which are actually inferior due to very deep and specific tactical sequences which no chess-playing entity can calculate better than I. Thanks for watching.